We need to talk about the end. Not the end you've imagined, not the slow fade of stars or the heat death billions of years away. We need to talk about the end that could happen right now, this second. The end that might already be racing toward us at the speed of light, and we would never see it coming. You're sitting there, listening to this, breathing, existing. Your atoms are holding together. The electrons orbit your nuclei. The quarks bind inside your protons. The fundamental forces of nature are doing exactly what they've always done. Everything seems stable. Everything seems permanent. But what if it isn't? What if the universe we inhabit, the reality we trust, is metastable? What if we're living in what physicists call a false vacuum, and the true vacuum, the real ground state of existence, is waiting to consume everything we know? This isn't science fiction. This is cosmology's nightmare scenario, and we need to understand it together, because if it's real, there's no escape, no warning, no tomorrow. Let us begin with what we know, or think we know, about the structure of reality itself. The universe operates on fields, not the fields you walk through on Earth, but quantum fields that permeate every cubic centimetre of space. The electromagnetic field, the Higgs field, the fields that give particles their mass, their charge, their very ability to exist. These fields have energy states, and like a ball resting in a valley, they settle into the lowest energy configuration they can find. We call this the vacuum state, the ground state, the foundation of physical law. But here's where the horror begins. What if the valley our universe rests in isn't the lowest valley? What if there's a deeper valley, a lower energy state, and we're just sitting in a local minimum, a false vacuum, held in place by a quantum barrier we don't fully understand? In 1980, physicists Sidney Coleman and Frank DeLucia published a paper that still haunts the field. They describe mathematically how a false vacuum could decay, how a tiny bubble of true vacuum could spontaneously form, quantum tunneling through the barrier, creating a sphere of new physics that expands at the speed of light. Inside this bubble, the fundamental constants change. The masses of particles rewrite themselves. The forces that hold atoms together cease to function as they do now. And here's the truly terrifying part. We wouldn't see it coming. The boundary of this bubble moves at light speed, so the first indication that reality is being rewritten would be the rewriting itself. No warning, no chance to observe it approaching, just transition, annihilation, reformation into something that cannot support the structures we call matter, life, thought. We sit here in our false vacuum, if that's what it is, and we have no way to know if somewhere across the cosmos the decay has already begun. A bubble of true vacuum could be expanding toward us right now, crossing the intergalactic void at 299,792 kilometers per second. It could be 1 billion light years away, or 1 million, or 1,000. It could reach Earth in 10 seconds, or 10 billion years. We cannot know. We cannot see it. We can only exist in this moment and trust that the next moment will follow the same rules. Let's make this more visceral, more immediate, more real. Imagine it starts tomorrow. Not here, somewhere distant. Perhaps in a galaxy we've observed, perhaps in a region of space we've never seen. A quantum fluctuation occurs, 1 in a trillion events, and a microscopic bubble of true vacuum nucleates into existence. At this scale, it's smaller than an atom, but it's stable, and it begins to grow. The bubble's boundary is not a wall or a membrane. It's a region of space where the fundamental laws of physics are actively transitioning from one set of rules to another. Inside the bubble, the Higgs field has settled into its true lowest energy state. The masses of particles are different now. Electrons might be heavier, quarks might be lighter. The fine structure constant which determines the strength of electromagnetic interactions has shifted. These sound like abstract numbers, but they dictate everything. The size of atoms, the stability of nuclei, the chemistry that allows molecules to form, Change these constants even slightly, and you don't get a different kind of universe. You get chaos. You get structures that cannot hold themselves together. The bubble expands. First, it's the size of a planet, then a star system, then a galaxy. It moves through space at the maximum speed causality allows, converting everything it touches into this new regime of physics. Stars within the bubble don't just die, they cease to be possible. Their fusion reactions, which depend on the precise balance of nuclear forces, can no longer occur. The atoms in their cores, held together by forces that no longer exist in the same way, simply disintegrate. And the bubble keeps growing. Within 1 million years, it's consumed a supercluster. Within 10 million, a significant fraction of the observable universe. And still, no one inside our false vacuum knows it's coming. The light from the galaxies being destroyed hasn't reached us yet. We look at the sky and see stars that were annihilated eons ago, still twinkling, still beautiful, still lying to us about the state of the cosmos. Now let's bring it closer. Let's say the bubble has been expanding for 100 million years, and it's now only 100 light years from Earth. The year is 2125. Humanity has spread to Mars, to the moons of Jupiter. We've built telescopes that can image exoplanets in detail. We've detected techno-signatures from another civilization 50 light years away. We're not alone. We're not even the only ones reaching for the stars. And then an astronomer notices something strange. A galaxy in the Virgo supercluster has vanished from our instruments, not dimmed, vanished. Its light simply stops reaching us, as though a curtain has been drawn across the universe. Then another galaxy, then 10, then 100. We don't understand it at first. We think it's an instrumental error, a software glitch, a cosmic dust cloud. But the pattern spreads, an expanding sphere of nothingness, erasing galaxies from our view at precisely the speed of light. Some scientists hypothesize a new form of dark matter, absorbing light. Others suggest a mega-scale Kardashev-type civilization, building a Dyson sphere around entire galactic clusters. But a few physicists, the ones who remember Coleman and DeLucia, start to calculate, and their faces go pale. The math fits perfectly. The expansion rate, the light speed boundary, the total erasure of electromagnetic signals. This isn't a natural phenomenon, this is vacuum decay. The true vacuum is here, and it's coming for us. We have 100 years. That might sound like a lot of time to prepare, to research, to find a solution. But there is no solution. You cannot outrun light. You cannot shield yourself from a change in the fundamental constants of nature. You cannot negotiate with quantum mechanics. For 100 years we watch the sphere of annihilation creep closer. We see it consume the nearest stars. Alpha Centauri goes dark, then Sirius, then Vega. We watch our neighbouring civilizations wink out, their radio signals cutting off mid-transmission, their last messages to us unfinished sentences screaming into the void. Humanity tries everything. We build generation ships and send them in the opposite direction, hoping to outrun the bubble's expansion. But space itself is expanding too, and the math is merciless. They'll buy themselves centuries, maybe millennia, but the bubble will catch them eventually. It will catch everything, everywhere, given enough time. We try to understand the new physics inside the bubble. We send probes toward the boundary, instruments designed to measure the changing constants, to send back data about what happens when the false vacuum decays. Every probe goes silent the instant it crosses the threshold. Not destroyed. Just changed into something that can no longer operate, can no longer be what it was. Some physicists propose collapsing the false vacuum intentionally, triggering our own bubble of true vacuum, hoping our version will have constants that allow for some form of stable matter. It's insane. It's suicide. We'd be destroying the universe to save it, and we'd have no control over what replaces our reality. The proposal is rejected. We will face the void as it comes for us, not accelerate our own demise. In the final decade, the sky begins to go dark. The Milky Way's outer arms are being consumed. Stars we've known for all of human history, stars that guided ancient navigators, stars that inspired poets and dreamers, simply cease to be. The night sky becomes less crowded every year, then every month, then every week. Humanity doesn't panic, not in the way you might expect. There's no hysteria, no riots. There's a strange, quiet acceptance. We hold each other. We tell stories. We create art knowing it will be erased. We love knowing it doesn't matter. And in that final knowing, in that absolute certainty of the end, we find something unexpected. We find peace. The boundary reaches the solar system. Neptune goes first, its atoms reorganized into configurations that cannot sustain planetary structure. It doesn't explode, it doesn't collapse, it just stops being Neptune, then Uranus, then Saturn, its magnificent rings dissolving into patterns of particles that obey new rules, create new forms we'll never understand. Jupiter's last, the gas giant that protected Earth for billions of years, absorbing comets and asteroids that might have ended us long before we became aware enough to see our own ending. It faces the bubble, and for just a moment, as the boundary touches its atmosphere, we see something impossible. The instruments record it before they too are consumed. A flash, not light, something deeper. The signatures of particles that shouldn't exist, forces that cannot occur in our physics, structures assembling and dissolving in configurations our mathematics cannot describe. And then it's gone, and Mars is next. The colony there has 3 hours. They spend it sending messages to Earth. Not goodbyes exactly, observations, descriptions of what they see as the boundary approaches. They report that the stars beyond the bubble aren't just gone. The space itself looks different, darker, but not empty, filled with something they can't name, can't categorize. Some of them describe it as alive, though they immediately retract the word, knowing it's inadequate, knowing that life is a concept born of our false vacuum and might not survive the translation. Their final transmission is a single sentence. It's beautiful. Then silence. Earth has minutes now. We gather in cities and small towns, in homes and on hilltops. Some people pray, some laugh, some simply breathe and feel grateful they got to breathe at all. The scientists even now are recording data, measuring the approach, trying to understand until the very last moment what it means for the Higgs field to transition from metastable to stable, what it means for the universe to finally settle into its true ground state. The boundary crosses the moon. For half a second, we see it in the sky, a perfect sphere of alteration sweeping toward us faster than thought. And in that half second, some of us understand this isn't destruction, this is transformation. The universe isn't ending, it's becoming what it was always meant to be. We're the anomaly. With a brief, impossible flicker of complexity that arose in a metastable state, and now the cosmos is correcting itself. The boundary touches Earth's atmosphere, and we. But let's step back. Let's ask ourselves if this horror scenario, this vacuum decay apocalypse, is even likely. Let's examine the physics not as a narrative of doom, but as a genuine scientific question, because that's what we owe ourselves. Understanding, not fear, but comprehension. The truth is, we don't know if we live in a false vacuum. We have measurements of the Higgs field's mass, and those measurements suggest we're close to the boundary between stability and metastability. Some calculations indicate the universe is stable. Others suggest it's metastable but with a decay time far longer than the current age of the cosmos. Still others hint that we're in a precarious position, and only quantum corrections we don't fully understand are keeping the vacuum from decaying. The error bars on these calculations are enormous. We're trying to predict the behaviour of quantum fields across cosmological timescales, using mathematics that might not even apply at those extremes. We're extrapolating from particle physics experiments conducted in the tiniest fractions of a second to make claims about eternity. It's audacious, it's necessary, and it's deeply uncertain. What we can say is this: if the vacuum is metastable, the decay rate depends on the height and thickness of the energy barrier separating the false vacuum from the true vacuum. Quantum tunneling allows particles, and even entire regions of space, to pass through barriers they classically couldn't overcome. But the probability of such tunneling depends exponentially on the barrier's properties. A high, thick barrier makes tunneling incredibly rare. A low, thin barrier makes it more probable. Current estimates, based on the masses of the Higgs boson and the top quark, suggest that if our vacuum is metastable, the decay time is on the order of 10 to the power of 100 years or more. That's not 100 years, that's a one followed by 100 zeros, a timescale so vast that it dwarfs the current age of the universe by factors we can barely conceptualize. So we're probably safe, for now, for eons beyond, counting. But probably isn't certainty, and that's the seed of the horror we're exploring. The universe is not obligated to comfort us. Physics doesn't care about our hopes or our civilizations. If the vacuum can decay, it will eventually, and when it does, there's no appeal, no reprieve. Let's consider what might trigger such a decay, because that's where the nightmare scenarios begin to proliferate. One possibility: high-energy particle collisions. When cosmic rays, particles accelerated to near light speed by supernovae or black holes, strike atoms in Earth's atmosphere, they release energies we can barely produce in our most powerful accelerators. These collisions create showers of exotic particles, brief flickers of conditions that haven't existed since the early universe. Some physicists worried that the Large Hadron Collider, smashing protons together at unprecedented energies, might create a microscopic black hole or trigger vacuum decay. The concerns were addressed through careful calculation. We've observed cosmic rays with far greater energies hitting the Moon, the Earth, Jupiter, and they haven't triggered the end of existence. The universe has been conducting high-energy experiments for billions of years without catastrophe. But as we build more powerful accelerators, as we probe deeper into the structure of matter, we approach energies where our confidence in the mathematics begins to waver. What if there's a threshold we haven't identified? What if a particular combination of conditions, a specific collision at a specific energy, is the precise configuration needed to nucleate a true vacuum bubble? We don't think it's likely. We've done the math, but we're doing the math with theories that might be incomplete. We're missing quantum gravity. We don't understand dark matter. We can't explain dark energy. Our standard model of particle physics is extraordinarily successful within its domain, but it's not the final theory. And if it's not final, then our predictions about vacuum stability might be wrong. Speculative possibility, and I'll mark this clearly as speculation not grounded in established physics. What if consciousness, or complexity, or information processing at a certain threshold interacts with quantum fields in ways we haven't detected? What if civilizations that become sufficiently advanced that manipulate matter and energy at fundamental levels inadvertently stress the vacuum structure? There's no evidence for this. None. But it's a thought experiment worth considering in the context of cosmic horror. Imagine that intelligence itself, the universe becoming aware of itself through the evolution of conscious beings, is the trigger. Every civilization that reaches a certain level of technological sophistication slightly increases the probability of vacuum decay in their region of space. If this were true, and again, I emphasize this is pure speculation, then the Fermi paradox, the apparent absence of other advanced civilizations, takes on a grim new dimension. Perhaps the great filter isn't nuclear war or climate change or artificial intelligence run amok. Perhaps it's that every civilization advanced enough to ask these questions eventually asks them too precisely, probes reality too deeply, and triggers the decay that erases them and everything in their cosmic neighborhood. We would be playing Russian roulette with the fabric of space-time itself. and the gun would have trillions of chambers, but only one needs a bullet. Let's shift our perspective outward, to the scale where vacuum decay becomes not a local catastrophe, but a universal phase transition. The observable universe is 93 billion light-years across. That's the region of space from which light has had time to reach us since the Big Bang. Beyond that horizon, there's more universe, potentially infinite universe, but it's causally disconnected from us. We cannot see it, cannot affect it, cannot be affected by it, unless vacuum decay starts beyond the horizon. Imagine a bubble of true vacuum nucleating 100 billion light-years away, far beyond our observable universe. It begins expanding at light speed. We have no way to detect it. No information from beyond the cosmic horizon can reach us. The bubble could already be larger than our entire observable universe, racing toward us through regions of space we'll never see, and we'd have no warning until the boundary crosses into our cosmic neighborhood. At that point, we'd have at most tens of billions of years before it reached us, assuming it nucleated shortly after the Big Bang and has been expanding ever since. But here's the truly unsettling part. Vacuum decay doesn't respect the expansion of space. While the universe's expansion can carry distant galaxies away from us faster than light, increasing their distance over time, a vacuum decay bubble expands through space itself. It's not being carried by cosmic expansion. It's propagating through the fabric of reality. Recent calculations, and I want to be careful here because this is at the edge of established cosmology, suggest that in an accelerating universe, a universe dominated by dark energy like ours, a vacuum decay bubble could actually catch up to regions of space that are receding from it due to cosmic expansion. The math depends on the specific energy densities involved, but the possibility is there. A bubble nucleating in our current cosmic epoch could, theoretically, eventually consume the entire future-like cone of the universe. What does this mean? It means that even though space is expanding, even though distant galaxies are moving away from us faster than light, a true vacuum bubble could still reach them. Given enough time, it could reach everything that will ever be causally connected to its point of origin. The universe could be in the process of complete phase transition, shifting from false vacuum to true vacuum, and the process might be irreversible and total. Now, before we spiral into absolute existential dread, let's ground ourselves in what we can observe and what remains unknown. We've been studying the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang, for decades. It's remarkably uniform, with temperature fluctuations of only 1 part in 100,000. If vacuum decay had occurred in the early universe, if bubbles of true vacuum had formed during the inflationary epoch, we'd expect to see their imprints in the CMB. We'd see circles or spheres of altered temperature, regions where the constants of physics were different. We don't see that. The CMB is smooth, consistent with a universe that settled into a single vacuum state very early in its history and has remained there since. This suggests, though it doesn't prove, that our vacuum is either truly stable or metastable, with an extraordinarily long lifetime. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, particularly when we're talking about events that might occur on timescales trillions of times longer than the current age of the universe. Let's talk about what happens if vacuum decay isn't a binary event, if it's not false vacuum versus true vacuum, but rather a cascade of metastable states. Some theories in particle physics suggest that the Higgs field might have multiple valleys, multiple possible vacuum states, each separated by energy barriers. If this is true, then vacuum decay might not be a single catastrophic transition, but a series of transitions, each reshaping the laws of physics slightly, each creating a universe with different properties. Imagine it like a ball rolling down a staircase rather than falling off a cliff. Each step changes the rules, changes the constants, changes what's possible, and at each step, observers, if any can exist, would experience their universe as normal, as stable, never knowing they're in yet another metastable state waiting to decay to the next level. This is deeply unsettling for a different reason than the instant annihilation scenario. It means the universe might be constantly reinventing itself on timescales we can't perceive, and we're just living in one snapshot of an endlessly falling system. Speculation mode again. What if consciousness is persistent through these transitions? What if information, in some quantum sense, survives the rewriting of physical law? You'd have beings who've lived through multiple universes, each one feeling like the only universe, each one temporary, each one a brief stable moment in an eternal cascade towards some final ground state that might never arrive. This is not physics, this is metaphysics, maybe even theology. But it's the kind of thought experiment that emerges when we take vacuum decay seriously and extrapolate beyond our current mathematical frameworks. Let's return to scenarios we can anchor in observation and experiment. The James Webb Space Telescope and the observations that have come from it have given us unprecedented views of the early universe. We're seeing galaxies that formed only a few 100 million years after the Big Bang. Galaxies that appear more massive and more structured than our models predicted. Some cosmologists are revisiting fundamental assumptions. Could our understanding of the early universe be incomplete? Could there have been processes, fields, interactions we haven't accounted for? And if our models of the early universe need revision, what does that mean for our predictions about vacuum stability? The Higgs field's vacuum expectation value, the number that determines particle masses, is tied to the conditions of the early universe. If those conditions were different than we've assumed, the calculations of vacuum stability need to be redone. We might be more stable than we think, or less. Every new discovery, every refinement of our observations shifts the error bars on these calculations. We're getting more precise, but precision in this context doesn't always bring comfort. Sometimes it narrows the range from probably stable to we really don't know. Let me share something that keeps cosmologists awake at night. We've discovered that the universe's expansion is accelerating, driven by something we call dark energy. We don't know what dark energy is. We model it as a cosmological constant, a property of space itself, but that's a placeholder, not an explanation. What if dark energy is itself a sign of vacuum metastability? What if the accelerating expansion is a symptom of the vacuum slowly evolving toward a lower energy state? The decay wouldn't be sudden. It would be gradual, spread across billions of years, and we'd perceive it as cosmic acceleration. If this is true, and I emphasize this is highly speculative, then the universe isn't facing a potential future decay. It's already in the process of decaying, and we're living through the transition, mistaking it for a stable feature of cosmology. The implications are staggering. It would mean the heat death of the universe, the scenario where stars burn out and the cosmos fades to darkness, might be interrupted by a phase transition. Before the universe can die a slow heat death, it might transform into something else entirely. We can't know. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And that's the true horror, isn't it? Not the certainty of doom, but the uncertainty. The knowledge that we exist on a knife's edge of quantum probability, and the blade could fall at any moment, or never, and we have no way to tell the difference. Let's shift the tone now, because dwelling in fear doesn't serve us. Let's move toward acceptance, toward contemplation, toward the deep time perspective that gives this channel its name. Imagine you're floating in space, far from Earth, far from any star. You're hovering in the intergalactic void, and around you, in all directions, galaxies drift like islands in an infinite ocean. You have all the time in the world, all the time in the universe, and you're thinking about vacuum decay. At first, it's terrifying. The idea that everything could end without warning, that the universe could be replaced by something hostile to your existence, is profoundly unsettling. But as you float there, as the eons pass in your thought experiment, the fear begins to shift. you realise that vacuum decay, if it happens, isn't malicious. It's not targeting you or humanity or life. It's just physics. The universe settling into a lower energy state, the way water flows downhill, the way heat dissipates. It's natural. It's inevitable, if it's possible at all. And there's something almost beautiful in that inevitability. The universe doesn't owe us stability. It doesn't owe us a future. Every moment we've had, every thought, every laugh, every connection between minds has been a gift borrowed from the temporary stability of quantum fields. We've existed in the pause between creation and dissolution, and that pause has been enough for stars to form, for planets to cool, for life to emerge and ask questions about its own existence. If the vacuum decays tomorrow, or in 1 trillion years, it doesn't diminish what we've experienced. It doesn't erase the meaning we've created. Meaning isn't measured in duration. It's measured in depth, in the quality of awareness, in the recognition of beauty and complexity and wonder. From a cosmic perspective, the difference between a universe that lasts 14 billion years and one that lasts 14 trillion years is trivial. Both are brief flickers in the context of eternity. What matters is that during the flicker, something extraordinary happened. The universe became aware of itself. Through us, through any conscious beings anywhere in the cosmos, the universe opened eyes and looked back at its own beginning and forward to its own ending. Vacuum decay, in this light, is just another form of impermanence. We know our individual lives are temporary. We know civilizations rise and fall. We're beginning to accept that stars die, that galaxies collide and merge, that even supermassive black holes will eventually evaporate via Hawking radiation. Why should the laws of physics themselves be exempt from change? Maybe permanence isn't possible. Maybe everything, even the fundamental constants, is subject to flux and transformation, and maybe that's okay. Let's go deeper into time. Let's imagine the universe survives vacuum decay, or that vacuum decay never occurs. Let's follow the timeline forward to the real deep time, the timescales where human intuition breaks down completely. In 1 trillion years, the last stars will be forming. The universe's star formation epoch will be ending because the raw materials, the hydrogen and helium, will be locked up in stellar remnants and planets, and the expansion of space will have carried most galaxies beyond each other's gravitational reach. In 100 trillion years, the last stars will burn out. The universe will be dark, except for the occasional flash of a white dwarf collision or the faint glow of black hole accretion disks. In 10 to the 40 years, the protons in dead stars and planets will begin to decay. If current theories of particle physics are correct, matter itself will dissolve into radiation. In 10 to the 100 years, the supermassive black holes at the centres of galaxies will evaporate through Hawking radiation, releasing their mass as faint streams of particles into an ever-expanding void. And somewhere in that timeline, if our vacuum is metastable, the decay might occur. A bubble might nucleate, the universe might transition. But from the perspective of deep time, it almost doesn't matter when it happens. The universe is already on a trajectory toward maximum entropy, toward heat death, toward a state where no complex structures can exist, where no energy gradients remain to power stars or life or thought. Vacuum decay would just be a different path to a similar destination. Instead of slowly fading, the universe would suddenly transform. Instead of a whimper, a bang. Or perhaps not a bang, but a quiet reformulation. A reshuffling of the quantum deck into a configuration we can't predict or understand. And in that reformulation, who knows? Maybe new forms of complexity become possible. Maybe the true vacuum, whatever it is, allows for structures and processes we can't imagine from our current vantage point. Maybe vacuum decay isn't the end, but a metamorphosis. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying we don't know, and in that uncertainty, there's room for hope as much as there is for horror. Let's talk about us, about humanity. about what it means to live with this knowledge. We're a species that evolved to worry about predators, about food scarcity, about social status within our tribe. We're not built to contemplate cosmic timescales or quantum tunneling probabilities, and yet here we are, doing exactly that. We're apes who learn to think about the end of everything, and we're not even particularly good at it. We oscillate between terror and indifference. Some days the idea of vacuum decay keeps us awake. Other days we can't even remember what it is. Our brains aren't designed to hold existential threats in constant awareness. We habituate. We move on. We focus on the immediate, the tangible, the problems we can actually solve. And that's okay. That's healthy even. We can't live every moment in awareness of our cosmic fragility. We'd never get anything done. We'd never create, never love, never build. But occasionally on nights like this, when we're listening to voices from the void talk about the unraveling of reality, we can let ourselves feel it. The weight of it. The magnificence of it. The sheer improbability that we're here at all, in a universe balanced on the edge of metastability, asking questions we might not survive long enough to answer. There's a kind of defiance in that questioning. The universe didn't have to produce beings capable of understanding vacuum decay. Evolution didn't have to select for brains that could contemplate their own annihilation in quantum mechanical terms, but it did. And here we are. We're the universe's way of knowing about vacuum decay. We're the part of the cosmos that can look at the equations describing its potential destruction and say, that's unsettling, let's study it more. That's not nothing. That's remarkable. Some physicists have proposed that we might be able to detect vacuum decay before it reaches us, if it's occurring somewhere in the cosmos. The idea is that the transition from false to true vacuum might emit gravitational waves, ripples in space-time that propagate at light speed, just like the boundary of the bubble itself. If we had sufficiently sensitive gravitational wave detectors spread across the galaxy or even across cosmic distances, we might pick up the signal of a vacuum decay event happening thousands or millions of light years away. We'd have a warning. Not much of one, since the bubble itself is right behind the signal, travelling at the same speed, but a warning nonetheless. What would we do with such information? What could we do? There's no shelter from a change in fundamental constants. No bunker deep enough. No spaceship fast enough. We'd have at most a few years or centuries or millennia, depending on the distance, to know that our time is limited. Would that knowledge be a curse or a gift? Would we spend our remaining time in panic? Or would we find a way to make peace with the inevitable? I suspect we'd do what humanity has always done in the face of the inevitable. We'd create, we'd love, we'd tell stories. We'd try to leave something behind, even knowing that whatever we leave will be transformed into unrecognisable forms when the new physics takes hold. Maybe we'd encode our existence into the most fundamental structures we could access, patterns in quantum entanglement, information encoded in the spin states of particles, messages written in configurations so basic that they might survive the transition, might persist into the true vacuum as evidence that we were here. It probably wouldn't work. The new physics would likely scramble any information encoded in the old physics. But we try anyway, because that's what we do. We rage against the dying of the light, even when the light is the fundamental structure of reality itself. Let me take you to the boundary now. Let's imagine we're observing the moment of transition, not as victims but as witnesses. We've developed technology that allows us to exist at the edge of the vacuum decay bubble. Instruments that can measure and record as one set of physical laws gives way to another. The boundary isn't sharp. It's a transition zone, a region of space where the Higgs field is actively changing its vacuum expectation value. Inside this zone, particles are becoming different particles. Atoms are restructuring, upstream forces between quarks are shifting in strength. Our instruments are failing, of course. They were built according to the old physics, and the new physics doesn't support their operation. But in the last moments before they cease to function, they record something extraordinary. The transition isn't chaotic, it's structured. The new vacuum state has its own symmetries, its own conservation laws. It's not random noise, It's a different order, a different set of rules for how reality organizes itself. And in that moment, we understand something profound. Physics isn't destroyed by vacuum decay, it's transformed. The universe isn't ending, it's changing languages, shifting from one grammar of existence to another. Whether that grammar can support complexity, whether it can give rise to new forms of structure, and perhaps even new forms of awareness, we can't know from our instrument's final readings. But the possibility is there. The universe is larger than we are, it's older than we are. It will outlast us in any scenario, whether through heat death or vacuum decay or processes we haven't even imagined yet. And maybe that's as it should be. We're not the point of the cosmos, we're an expression of it, a particular configuration that arose under particular conditions. If those conditions change, we'll cease to be this configuration, but the universe will continue, expressing itself in new ways, following new rules, perhaps giving rise to new forms of awareness that will ask their own questions about their own existence and their own endings. The horror is fading now, isn't it? As we've spent time with vacuum decay, as we've explored its mechanisms and implications, it's becoming less a monster under the bed and more a fact of nature. Unsettling, yes. Worthy of study and respect, absolutely. But not personal, not malicious. The universe is doing what universes do. It's evolving according to the laws of physics, or perhaps according to meta-laws we haven't discovered yet, laws that govern how physical laws themselves can change. We can fear this, or we can marvel at it. Let's choose marvel. Think about what it means that vacuum decay is even possible. It means the universe is dynamic at every level, from the quantum fluctuations of virtual particles to the large-scale structure of space-time to the fundamental constants themselves. Nothing is truly static. Everything is process, flux, becoming. We knew this about matter. We knew atoms are mostly empty space, that particles pop in and out of existence, that what seems solid is actually a dance of forces and probabilities. Now we're learning it might be true about the laws themselves. The rules of the game might be temporary, local, subject to change. That's terrifying if you want certainty. It's exhilarating if you want truth. The universe doesn't care about our comfort. It cares, if it cares about anything, about following its own nature, expressing its own possibilities. We're lucky enough to be here during a stable epoch, a moment when the vacuum allows for atoms and chemistry and life. If that moment is temporary, we've still had it. We've still experienced it. We've still been part of the universe's grand exploration of what's possible. Let's float here for a while, in this space between knowing and not knowing. The vacuum might decay tomorrow. It might never decay. We can't control it. We can't predict it with certainty. All we can do is continue to observe, to measure, to refine our understanding. And while we do that, while we push the boundaries of knowledge, we can also live. We can appreciate the stability we have, however temporary it might be. We can love the people around us. We can create things that matter to us, even if they won't matter to the universe. Because here's the secret that horror can't touch. Meaning doesn't require permanence. The fact that something ends doesn't make it meaningless while it exists. Your life will end. Does that make it meaningless? The sun will die. Does that make its light less warm on your skin? Vacuum decay, if it occurs, will end our universe as we know it. But right now, the universe as we know it is here. And we're in it. And we're aware of it. And that awareness, that consciousness, that ability to contemplate vacuum decay while floating in a stable vacuum is itself a kind of miracle. The deepest time is now, the eternal present, where all our thinking and feeling occurs. Past and future are concepts, useful for planning and remembering, but the actual experience of existence is always now. And in this now, the vacuum is stable. The Higgs field is doing its thing. Electrons are orbiting nuclei. Your neurons are firing, processing these words, forming thoughts about the end of reality. The fact that this might all change, that it might all be temporary, doesn't diminish the extraordinary fact that it's happening at all. We are the universe contemplating its own potential, transformation. We are matter and energy organised in such a way that we can understand vacuum decay, can feel awe and fear and wonder at the prospect, can create art and science and philosophy in response to it. That's not a small thing. That's everything. Let the horror fade. Let the acceptance grow. Let the deep time perspective wash over you like a tide, carrying away the urgent fear and leaving behind a calm recognition of our place in the cosmos. We're here, now, in a universe that might be metastable, that might be eternal, that we can study but never fully control. We're here with questions we can ask but might not live to answer. We're here with each other, briefly, sharing this moment of awareness before we return to the atoms and energy from which we came. Vacuum decay doesn't change that. It's just another chapter in the long story of transformation that is the universe. A chapter we might witness, or might not. A chapter that will occur according to physical law or quantum probability, without regard for our hopes or fears. And that's okay. It has to be okay, because it's the truth, and we're a species that seeks truth even when it's uncomfortable. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning and the news is everywhere. Scientists have confirmed it. They've detected the gravitational wave signatures. A vacuum decay bubble nucleated 50,000 light years away, and it's expanding toward us. We have 50,000 years. 50,000 years sounds like forever. It's longer than recorded human history. It's longer than our species has been building cities, writing languages, wondering about the stars. Surely 50,000 years is enough time to what? To accept? To prepare? To transcend? Let's walk through what those 50,000 years might look like, because the human response to existential certainty is never simple, never straightforward. The first year is chaos. Not violent chaos necessarily, but psychological chaos. Every certainty is questioned. Every long-term plan feels absurd. Why save for retirement when retirement will occur in a universe that no longer exists? Why have children when they're born into a countdown? Why build anything meant to last when we know, with absolute precision, the date when lasting becomes impossible? Some people retreat into denial. They claim the scientists are wrong, that the measurements are flawed, that God or aliens or quantum miracles will intervene. They build movements around hope, around the certainty that humanity is special, chosen, protected. These movements are not small, they're massive. Billions of people cannot accept that the universe is indifferent to their existence, and so they construct narratives where it isn't. Others embrace the end with almost religious fervour. They quit their jobs, sell their possessions, and dedicate themselves to experience. If we have 50,000 years, they reason, then we have 50,000 years to live fully, completely, without the pretense that any of this matters. Beyond the immediate sensation of being alive, hedonism spreads, not as excess, but as philosophy. Pleasure becomes theology. But most people, the vast majority, continue. They go to work, they raise families, they argue about politics and taxes and where to go on vacation. Because what else can you do? You can't spend 50,000 years in existential crisis. The human mind isn't built for that. We adapt. We normalise. We make the countdown just another fact of existence, like death, like entropy, like the eventual cooling of the sun. 10 years pass, a decade of living with the knowledge. Humanity has changed, but not in the ways anyone predicted. Art has exploded. Every medium, every form of expression is experiencing a renaissance. Because if everything ends, then nothing we create will last. And if nothing will last, then we're free to create without concern for legacy, for permanence, for judgment by future generations who won't exist. Music becomes more experimental. Literature becomes more honest. Visual art becomes more bold. The art isn't hopeful. Most of it is deeply melancholic, saturated with the awareness of impermanence. But it's also beautiful, maybe more beautiful than anything humans have created before, because it's made without ego, without the need to be remembered. It exists for its own sake, for the immediate experience of creation and appreciation, and then it's gone, and that's okay. Science accelerates. Every researcher knows their discoveries won't echo into eternity, but they make them anyway. We map the human brain completely. We solve protein folding. We develop quantum computers that exceed our wildest predictions. We do these things not because they'll save us, they won't, but because we're curious, because we're humans, because we ask questions even when the answers won't save us from the void. A strange thing happens around year 15. Depression rates drop, suicide rates drop, violence drops. People expected the opposite. They expected the knowledge of inevitable annihilation to drive humanity mad, but instead, it's clarifying. All the petty concerns, the status anxieties, the accumulation of wealth and power, they're revealed as the distractions they always were. What remains is simple. Be kind, love fully, experience deeply, create beauty, understand truth. It's not utopia. People still hurt each other. Nations still disagree, but the intensity of the disagreements diminishes. It's hard to maintain hatred when you know both you and your enemy will be unmade by the same quantum transition. It's hard to cling to ideology when all ideologies end at the same boundary. 100 years pass. The first generation born after the announcement reaches adulthood. They've never known a world without the countdown. To them, it's not a revelation or a crisis. It's just reality. The sky is blue. Water is wet. The vacuum will decay in 49,900 years. These children are different from their parents. They don't grieve for a future that was taken from them because they never believed in infinite futures to begin with. They're more present, more immediate, more focused on the quality of each moment rather than the accumulation of moments into some grand narrative. They ask different questions than their parents did. Not, how do we stop this? But, what does it mean to live well in a finite universe? Not, can we escape? But, what shall we do with the time we have? Some of them become philosophers. They develop new frameworks for meaning that don't rely on permanence, for ethics that don't require eternal consequences, for beauty that doesn't need to last. Their philosophies spread, not through force or dogma, but through resonance. People read them and think, yes, that's it. That's how to live in the shadow of the unraveling. Others become what we might call moment architects. They dedicate themselves to creating perfect experiences, a meal that captures everything beautiful about taste and conversation, a ceremony that honours love without pretending it's eternal, a piece of music that exists fully in its 3-minute duration and then releases you back into silence. These moment architects are celebrated not as artists but as something more essential. They're the ones who show humanity how to be present, how to extract meaning from the temporary, how to love what will end. 500 years have passed, 20 generations born and died knowing the end is coming. The countdown has faded from daily consciousness for most people, but it shapes everything nonetheless. Architecture has changed. No one builds monuments anymore. Why would you? Instead, buildings are designed for the people who will use them now, beautiful and functional, meant to serve for decades or a century and then return to the earth. Language has changed too. New words have emerged for concepts we needed names for. There's a word now that means the peace of knowing nothing lasts, another that means beauty intensified by impermanence, another for the community of all beings who will end together. These words don't translate well to the old languages, the languages spoken before the announcement. Those languages were built for a species that imagined infinite tomorrows. The new languages are built for a species that knows better. A religion emerges, or maybe it's a philosophy, or maybe it's something we don't have a word for yet. It teaches that the vacuum decay is not a punishment or a tragedy, but a revelation. The universe is showing us its true nature. Everything is temporary. Everything is process. Everything is transformation. The false vacuum we inhabit is just one state in an infinite series of states, and clinging to it, demanding it persist forever, is the source of suffering. Let go, this teaching says. Accept the flow. You're not separate from the universe that will transform. You are part of it, and when the transformation comes, you will transform too. Not into nothing, because nothing doesn't exist. Into something else. Something the current you cannot imagine, any more than a caterpillar can imagine being a butterfly. This religion doesn't promise survival. It promises something stranger. Participation. You will be part of the phase transition. Your atoms, your energy, will cross the boundary and emerge into the new physics, and while they won't be you anymore, they'll be something. The universe doesn't destroy, it transforms. Millions adopt this teaching. It gives them peace without requiring them to deny reality. It acknowledges the end while reframing it as continuation, not of identity, not of consciousness, but of existence itself. 1,000 years have passed. 49,000 remain. Humanity has spread to other star systems now, not to escape. We know we can't escape, but because we're curious, because we want to see what's out there, because we have time and capability and wonder. Each colony develops its own culture, its own response to the countdown. Some are hedonistic, squeezing every drop of pleasure from existence. Some are ascetic, practicing detachment from the material world that will soon cease to exist in its current form. Some are scientific, gathering data, making observations, trying to understand the decay down to its final quantum detail. And some are artistic beyond anything Earth has ever seen. They terraform planets not for habitation but for beauty. They arrange asteroids into sculptures that span light years. They encode messages into the cosmic microwave background, using technology we can barely describe, knowing the messages will be destroyed when the bubble arrives, creating art that exists only to be erased. Is it madness or enlightenment? The distinction has stopped mattering. 10,000 years have passed. 40,000 remain. Everyone alive now is separated from the announcement by 400 generations. It's ancient history. It's mythology. Except it's not mythology because the boundary is measurable, trackable, approaching at exactly the speed of light. And our instruments can show you precisely where it is, how much time remains. Humanity has evolved, not biologically. 50,000 years is nothing in evolutionary terms, but culturally, psychologically, spiritually. We're not the same species we were when the announcement came. We've been shaped by the certainty of ending, and the shape we've taken is strange and beautiful. We no longer fear death the way we used to. How could we, when we know death is just the first transition, and the vacuum decay is the final transition, and between the two there's life, experience, awareness. We die and are mourned and are celebrated, and then we're gone, and that's fine, that's natural, that's how it should be. We no longer cling to power the way we used to. What's the point? You can't rule beyond your lifetime, and your lifetime ends at your death or at the boundary, whichever comes first. Power has become service. Leaders are those who make the present better, not those who promise glorious futures. We've become a species of mystics and scientists, artists and philosophers, all trying to answer the same question. What does it mean to exist temporarily in a temporary universe? 25,000 years have passed. 25,000 remain. We're at the halfway point, and there's a collective pause, a moment of reflection. Humanity gathers, across all the worlds we've settled, connected by faster-than-light communication we developed in year 8,000, and we ask ourselves, what have we learned? We've learned that meaning doesn't require permanence, that love is not diminished by ending, that beauty is not lessened by impermanence, that knowledge is worth pursuing even if it won't echo into eternity, that kindness matters in the moment, regardless of whether the moment is remembered. We've learned to live fully in the present without denying the future, to make plans knowing they're temporary, To build knowing what we build will fall. To create knowing our creations will be transformed into something unrecognizable. We've learned that we are not the center of the universe, not its purpose, not its pinnacle. We're an expression of it, one configuration among infinite possible configurations, and when our configuration ends, the universe will continue expressing itself in new ways. This knowledge doesn't make us smaller, it makes us part of something larger. 40,000 years have passed, 10,000 remain. The boundary is close now, close enough that we can see its effects on nearby star systems. The stars beyond the boundary don't just disappear, they change. Their light shifts in frequency in ways our physics can't quite explain, wavelengths that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of the electromagnetic spectrum. We send probes to study the boundary more closely. They report back for microseconds before the transition takes them. In those microseconds, they detect something extraordinary. The new physics isn't empty. It's not a void. It supports structures, patterns, complexities we can barely begin to describe with our mathematics. Is it life? We don't know. Life is a concept that depends on our physics. But it's something. The true vacuum isn't barren, it's different. This discovery changes everything and nothing. We're still going to end. The boundary is still coming, but the ending might not be into emptiness, it might be into something else. Something we can't survive as we are, but something that exists, that has its own order, its own beauty. The fear comes back for some people. For 40,000 years we've made peace with ending. Now we're confronted with transformation into the unknowable, and that's harder to accept than simple annihilation. But others find hope in it. If the true vacuum supports complexity, maybe consciousness is possible there too, not our consciousness, not anything we'd recognize as awareness. But perhaps the universe doesn't stop being aware of itself just because the physics change. Perhaps awareness is more fundamental than we thought, woven into the fabric of reality at a level deeper than particles and forces. This is speculation. This is hope without evidence. But we're humans. We speculate. We hope. Even facing the unravelling, we imagine possibilities. 49,000 years have passed. 1,000 remain. Everyone alive knows they will see the boundary. It will arrive within their lifetime. The question is no longer whether but when. Some people move toward the boundary deliberately. They want to witness the transition up close, to see reality rewrite itself, to be the first to cross over. They build stations in the path of the approaching bubble, observatories designed to record every moment of the phase transition, knowing the recordings will last only milliseconds before they too are transformed. These observers are celebrated as heroes and mourned as lost. They're choosing to die sooner than they must, but they're doing it for knowledge, for experience, for the sheer audacity of looking the end in the face and taking notes. Others move away from the boundary, claiming every last moment of the old physics. They travel to the farthest colonies, the systems that will be the last to transform. They're not running, they know they can't run, but they're walking slowly toward the end rather than sprinting. And most people stay where they are, in the homes they've made, on the worlds they've settled, with the communities they've built. They continue their lives, their work, their loves, knowing the boundary is coming, accepting that it must. 49,900 years have passed. 100 remain. The boundary is visible now with the naked eye on planets close enough to the transition zone. The sky has changed. Stars are disappearing in a pattern, a sphere of darkness expanding across the heavens, except it's not darkness, not exactly. It's otherness. Space that follows different rules, displays different colours, exists in ways we can't quite perceive with our senses. Children born now will live their entire lives in the shadow of the visible boundary. They grow up watching it approach, a wall of transformation creeping across the cosmos, and it shapes them in ways we can't predict. They're less attached to the material world, more focused on consciousness itself, on the quality of awareness, on the experience of experience. They develop practices, meditations, techniques for experiencing their own minds as deeply as possible while they still have minds. They're preparing in their way for a transition they can't understand, trying to be present for the moment when presence itself might end or change beyond recognition. 49,990 years have passed. 10 years remain. The boundary has consumed the nearest stars. The night sky is half familiar constellations, half transformed space. The two regions are separated by a boundary so clear you could point to it, a line drawn across the universe separating what we know from what we're about to become. Humanity has one final project. We're encoding everything we've learned, everything we've experienced, everything we've created into the most stable structures we can devise. Not to preserve it, we know it can't be preserved, but to offer it to the transition. To say, this is what we were, this is what arose in the false vacuum. If anything of this can persist or transform into something meaningful in the true vacuum, we offer it freely. We inscribe it into quantum states, into the spin of particles, into the structure of space-time itself. We don't know if it will survive. We don't expect it to, but we do it anyway, because we're humans, and we leave messages even when we know they won't be read. 49,999 years have passed. 1 year remains. The boundary is days away from the first human colonies, weeks away from Earth. We've watched it consume the outer solar system, Neptune transformed before our eyes, its atoms restructuring into patterns that hurt to look at, geometries that our brains can't quite process. There's no panic. There's no chaos. We've had 50,000 years to prepare, and we've prepared. Not with shelters or escape plans, those were never possible, but with acceptance, with understanding, with a deep earned peace about what's coming. Families gather, friends reunite, strangers hold each other and share their fears and hopes and memories. We tell stories, we sing songs, we watch the boundary approach, and we name what we feel. Fear, yes, but also wonder, gratitude for the time we had, curiosity about what comes next, love for each other, for the universe, for the strange journey of existing at all. The final day arrives. The boundary will reach Earth in hours now. We've said our goodbyes. We've made our peace. We stand together, billions of us, on a planet that will soon cease to exist in its current form, and we watch the sky. The boundary crosses the moon first. For a moment, the moon is both itself and other, flickering between states, and then it's gone, replaced by structure that exists in the new physics, beautiful and terrible and utterly alien. Then it's our turn. The boundary touches Earth's atmosphere, and for a single, stretched moment, we exist in both states. We are ourselves, and we are becoming. We are matter organized according to false vacuum physics, and we are transforming into matter that obeys true vacuum physics. We are human, and we are... And then we... But I want to step back from this narrative, because I've been telling you a story, painting a picture of how 50,000 years of certainty might unfold, and the truth is, we don't know. We can't know. We're not built to predict human behaviour across such timescales, across such transformative knowledge. Maybe we'd handle it with grace, as I've described. Maybe we'd descend into madness. Maybe we'd fracture into 1,000 different responses, each culture, each community, each individual finding their own way to face the end. The point isn't to predict the future. The point is to use the thought experiment to examine ourselves now. How do we live with uncertainty? How do we find meaning in impermanence? How do we love what we know we'll lose? Because even without vacuum decay, we face these questions. Your life is temporary. Everyone you love will die, or you'll die first. Every civilization falls. Every star burns out. The time scales are different, but the fundamental truth is the same. Nothing lasts. Vacuum decay just makes this truth cosmic, immediate, undeniable. It removes the comfortable distance we maintain between ourselves and impermanence. It forces us to confront what we spend most of our lives avoiding. Everything ends, and that includes the and that, laws of nature themselves. So what do we do with this knowledge, this unavoidable awareness of universal impermanence? We could despair. We could conclude that if nothing lasts, nothing matters. But that's a logical fallacy, a trick our minds play on us. Permanence is not a prerequisite for meaning. A sunset is not less beautiful because it fades. Music is not less moving because it ends. Love is not less real because lovers are mortal. Meaning emerges in the moment, in the experience, in the connection between awareness and the world being aware. It doesn't require permanence any more than a wave requires the ocean to stop moving. Let's go deeper into this. Let's talk about consciousness itself, about awareness, about the strange fact that the universe contains regions where it knows itself. You are such a region. Your brain, your neurons, your patterns of electrical activity. They're the universe organized in such a way that the universe can think about itself. You're not separate from the cosmos. You're an expression of it. You're what happens when matter complexifies to the point of self-awareness. And here's the strange thing about consciousness. It exists only in the present. You can remember the past, but the memory is happening now. You can imagine the future, but the imagination is happening now. The actual experience of being aware is always, only, eternally now. This now is indestructible, because it's not a thing that exists in time. It's the arena where time exists. Past and future are concepts within consciousness. Now is consciousness itself. Vacuum decay will transform the physical substrate of your consciousness. The atoms in your brain will reorganize according to new physics. The neurons will cease to function as neurons. The patterns that create your thoughts and memories and sense of self will dissolve. But will consciousness itself end? Or will it transform? I'm not claiming consciousness survives death or vacuum decay in any personal sense. I'm not suggesting your identity, your memories, your sense of being you persists. That almost certainly doesn't happen. The pattern that is you depends entirely on the physics that allows neurons to fire and synapses to connect, and when that physics changes, the pattern dissolves. But consciousness, the bare fact of awareness, the quale of experience, the what it is likeness of existence, might be more fundamental than we think. Maybe it's not a property that emerges from specific physical configurations. Maybe it's woven into the fabric of reality itself, and what varies is only the form it takes, the complexity it achieves, the content it experiences. This is speculation. This is philosophy verging into metaphysics. But it's worth considering, because if consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, then vacuum decay doesn't end awareness. It transforms it. The universe doesn't stop experiencing itself, just experiences itself differently through new forms, new configurations, new possibilities we can't imagine from our current vantage point. And if consciousness is not fundamental, if it's truly emergent, dependent entirely on the specific physics of our vacuum state, then it ends. Genuinely, completely ends. And that's okay too, because it happened. For 13.8 billion years, or however long the false vacuum has existed, the universe achieved awareness through beings like us. It looked back at its own origin. It wondered about its own fate. It created mathematics and art and love. It knew beauty. It asked questions. It was aware. That's not nothing. That's everything. The fact that it might end doesn't diminish the fact that it occurred. Let's think about time differently for a moment. We experience time as a flow, a river carrying us from past through present into future. But physics suggests time might be more like a landscape, a static four-dimensional structure where all moments exist simultaneously, and our sense of flowing through it is an illusion created by the way our consciousness samples the landscape. If this is true, then the moments of your awareness, the experiences you're having right now, exist eternally in the time landscape. They're not flowing into the past and disappearing. They're permanent features of space-time, always present in their position along the timeline, always happening in the eternal now of their occurrence. Vacuum decay might transform future moments on the timeline, might change what exists in the later coordinates of space-time, but it can't erase what has already been inscribed in the earlier coordinates. Your existence, your awareness, your experience. It's written into the structure of reality, and it stays written even if reality itself transforms. This is physics, not mysticism. This is the block universe interpretation of time, suggested by relativity, debated by philosophers and physicists alike. I'm not claiming it's true. I'm offering it as a perspective that might bring comfort or insight. If all moments exist eternally in the time landscape, then you are eternal. Not your future, not your continuation, but your present, your now. This awareness you're experiencing, it's a permanent feature of the cosmos. Vacuum decay can't touch it because it's not in the future. It's here, now, always. Let's talk about meaning again, because it's the question underneath all of this. If vacuum decay can happen, if the universe is temporary, if nothing lasts, why does anything matter? Meaning is not something we find in the universe. It's something we create in response to the universe. It emerges from the interaction between consciousness and reality, between subjects and objects, between awareness and that which is aware. You are a meaning-making machine. You can't help but find significance in patterns, beauty in structures, value in experiences. It's how your brain works. It's what consciousness does, and the meanings you make are real. Not despite their subjectivity, but because of it. The universe doesn't care about you. It's not capable of caring. It's not a conscious entity, but you care about the universe. You find it beautiful, mysterious, worthy of study and wonder. And that caring, that valuing, that meaning-making, it's not less real because the universe doesn't reciprocate. Love is real even if the beloved doesn't love you back. Beauty is real even if beauty itself is unconscious. Meaning is real even if meaning is something only conscious beings create. Vacuum decay doesn't threaten meaning. It's irrelevant to meaning, because meaning exists in the present, in the awareness happening now, in your response to reality as you experience it. And that's indestructible because it's not a thing that persists through time. It's a thing that happens in time, moment by moment, and each moment is complete in itself. You're not building towards some ultimate meaning that will be destroyed if the universe transforms. You're experiencing meaning right now in every moment of awareness, in every recognition of beauty or truth or connection. And those experiences are complete. They don't need a future to validate them. This is perhaps the deepest truth we can extract from contemplating vacuum decay. The present is sufficient. The now is complete. You don't need permanence to justify your existence or your experience. You just need to be here, aware, experiencing, for however long here and aware and experiencing are possible. And they're possible now. That's not nothing. That's everything. Let's think about legacy for a moment. So much of human anxiety comes from the need to leave something behind, to be remembered, to have our existence acknowledged by future generations. We write books, build monuments, have children, create art, make scientific discoveries, all in the hope that will echo into the future, that will matter beyond our own lifetimes. Vacuum decay makes legacy absurd. There won't be future generations to remember us. Or if there are, they won't exist long enough for memory to mean what we think it means. Everything we create will be transformed into unrecognizable forms when the physics change. This could be devastating. For many people, the promise of legacy is what makes mortality bearable. If I die, but my children live, but my work continues, but my name is remembered, then I haven't truly ended. I've extended myself into the future through impact and influence. But vacuum decay says no, you end. Your work ends. Your impact ends. Memory ends. The future itself, in any form you'd recognize, ends. And yet, weirdly, this might be liberating. If legacy is impossible, then you're free to create without concern for how it will be received by posterity. You're free to live without trying to construct a narrative that future generations will admire. You're free to be yourself, flawed and temporary and complete in this moment, without needing to justify your existence to a future that won't exist. Your worth is not measured by your impact on the future. It's inherent in your present. You matter because you're aware, because you experience, because you're a location where the universe knows itself. And that mattering doesn't require validation from anyone or anything else. This is a hard teaching. We're so conditioned to think in terms of legacy, of progress, of building towards some glorious future. But what if the present is enough? What if being here, now, aware and experiencing is the entirety of the point? Vacuum decay, in its absolute denial of future permanence, forces us to confront this possibility. And if we can accept it, if we can truly internalize that the present is sufficient, then we become free in a way that's almost incomprehensible. Free from anxiety about the future, free from regret about the past, free to simply be here and now, without needing our existence to mean something beyond itself. Let's talk about connection. About the fact that you're not alone in facing impermanence and uncertainty. Every conscious being who has ever existed or will ever exist shares this condition with you. We're all temporary. We're all uncertain. We're all facing endings we can't avoid. This shared condition is the ground of compassion. When you truly understand that every person you meet is just as fragile, just as temporary, just as uncertain as you are, cruelty becomes impossible. How can you hate someone who is as vulnerable as you? How can you harm someone who is as temporary as you? Vacuum decay, the most universal shared fate imaginable, could be the catalyst for the deepest compassion humanity has ever achieved. We're all in this together, not metaphorically but literally. The same quantum transition that will transform you will transform everyone. The same boundary that will cross Earth will cross every planet we've settled, every being we've encountered, every form of complexity that has arisen in this false vacuum. We're not separate, we're not in competition. We're together, sharing this brief moment of stability before the transformation. And in that togetherness, in that recognition of shared fate, maybe we find the deepest meaning available to us. We're not alone. We were never alone. We're part of something vast and temporary and unutterably beautiful. A universe experiencing itself, knowing itself, loving itself, through countless eyes and minds and hearts. When the boundary comes, it comes for all of us. But before it comes, we have each other. And that's not nothing. That's everything. The philosophy is settling into your bones now, isn't it? The horror has fully transformed into acceptance, into a kind of peaceful recognition that impermanence is not the enemy. It's just the nature of things. And once you accept the nature of things, you can stop fighting and start experiencing. Let's rest here for a while longer. Let's let these ideas sink in, not as intellectual concepts, but as felt truths. You are temporary. The universe is temporary. Nothing lasts, not even the laws of physics. And that's okay. It has to be okay because it's true. And we're a species that eventually, grudgingly, accepts truth. The vacuum might decay tomorrow. It might never decay. You might live for decades more, or you might die in the next moment. The uncertainty is total, and the uncertainty is universal. But right now, in this moment, you exist. You're aware. You're experiencing these words, these thoughts, these feelings, and that experience is real, is valid, is complete in itself. You don't need permission to exist. You don't need justification. You don't need to prove your worth to the universe or to the future or to anyone. You're here. You're aware. That's enough. The boundary might be approaching, might be 50,000 years away, might be a microsecond away, might never approach at all. We don't know. We can't know. And in the not knowing, we find a strange freedom. We're not responsible for preventing vacuum decay. We can't. It's beyond us, beyond our control, beyond even our understanding. All we can do is be here, now, experiencing what it's like to exist in a potentially metastable universe, making meaning in the face of universal impermanence, loving what we know we'll lose. And maybe that's the point. Maybe consciousness evolved precisely to do this, to be aware of impermanence and to love anyway, to know that nothing lasts and to create anyway, to face the void and to sing into it, not because the singing will change anything, but because singing is what we do. It's what consciousness does. It makes meaning from chaos, beauty from entropy, love from the temporary collision of atoms that will soon disperse. You are the universe singing. You are matter knowing itself. You are the temporary, glorious, impossible flowering of awareness in a cosmos that doesn't care but doesn't need to care because you care and you're part of it and you're caring as it's caring, and that's enough. Rest in this. Rest in the knowledge that you're exactly where you need to be, which is here, now, aware. Rest in the certainty that uncertainty is the only certainty, and that's okay. Rest in the peace that comes from accepting impermanence, from loving what ends, from being here for however long here is possible. The vacuum holds for now. And now is all we ever really have. Let's drift now into stranger territories. Let's explore not just vacuum decay, but the whole catalogue of ways the universe might transform, might end, might reveal itself to be something other than what we've assumed. Because vacuum decay is just one possibility among many, and each possibility teaches us something different about our place in the cosmos. Consider the Big Rip. In this scenario, dark energy, the mysterious force accelerating the universe's expansion, isn't constant. It grows stronger over time. The expansion of space accelerates faster and faster, and eventually the acceleration becomes so extreme that it overcomes not just gravity but all the fundamental forces. First, galaxy clusters are pulled apart, then galaxies themselves, then star systems, then stars, then planets, then molecules, then atoms, then atomic nuclei, then quarks. Themselves are ripped away from each other, torn apart by the expanding fabric of space. The universe doesn't fade into darkness. It tears itself into pieces too small to be pieces, into a foam of disconnected quantum events, each isolated from every other by space expanding faster than light can cross the gap. The timeline for this is billions of years in the future, if it happens at all. Current measurements suggest dark energy is constant, not growing, but the error bars are large, and the possibility remains. What's interesting about the Big Rip philosophically is that it's the opposite of vacuum decay. Vacuum decay is sudden, immediate, a phase transition at light speed. The Big Rip is gradual, stretched across eons, giving consciousness plenty of time to watch the universe unravel. Which is worse, the instant transformation or the slow disintegration? Vacuum decay offers no time for fear, no prolonged suffering. One moment you exist, the next you're transformed. It's almost merciful in its speed. The Big Rip offers decades, then centuries, then millennia of watching the cosmos come apart. You'd see it happening. You'd watch stars drift away from each other, watch galaxies dissolve, watch the night sky empty. And you'd know with absolute certainty that eventually the force pulling everything apart would reach you, would enter your body, would pull your atoms away from each other. Some might prefer the warning, the ability to prepare, to say goodbye, to make peace. Others would find the waiting unbearable, would prefer the sudden transformation to the long decay. There's no right answer. There's just preference, personality, the particular shape of your relationship with mortality and uncertainty. Now consider the big crunch. In this scenario, the universe's expansion slows, stops, and reverses. everything begins falling back together. The galaxies that have been separating for billions of years start approaching each other. The cosmic microwave background grows hotter as space contracts. It takes billions of years, but eventually galaxy clusters collide, then galaxies, then stars. The universe becomes denser, hotter, more energetic. The night sky brightens as more and more radiation fills space. Eventually atoms can't hold themselves together. The universe becomes a plasma, then a quark-gluon soup, then something stranger still as we approach the conditions of the Big Bang in reverse. And then, we don't know. Maybe a singularity, maybe a bounce into a new Big Bang, maybe something our physics can't describe. The Big Crunch is different from both vacuum decay and the Big Rip, is not a transformation into new physics or a tearing apart of existing physics. It's a reversal, a return to the beginning, a cosmic inhale after the exhale of expansion. Philosophically, it's almost hopeful. It suggests the universe might be cyclical, might experience infinite births and deaths, might be eternal not in its duration, but in its renewal. Of course, you don't survive the Big Crunch any more than you survive vacuum decay or the Big Rip. The you that exists in this cycle doesn't carry over into the next. But the universe continues, reality persists, and maybe that's enough. Let's talk about heat death now, the slow fade, the long darkness. In this scenario, nothing dramatic happens. The universe just continues expanding forever. Stars use up their fuel and die. Black holes evaporate via Hawking radiation. Eventually, after timescales so vast we can barely write them down, even the protons decay and matter itself dissolves into radiation. The universe becomes a thin soup of photons, spreading ever farther apart as space expands, cooling toward absolute zero, approaching a state of maximum entropy where no energy gradients exist, where nothing can happen because there's no difference between one place and another. This is the slow death, the fade to black. The universe doesn't end with a bang or a rip or a transformation. It just stops, runs down like a clock, becomes still, becomes cold, becomes empty. Heat death is the scenario most consistent with our current observations. It's the default assumption in cosmology. And it's deeply, quietly, terrifying in a way the more dramatic endings aren't. Because heat death means consciousness has a deadline. Not tomorrow, not in 1,000,000 years, but eventually. There will come a time when the universe can no longer support the complexity required for awareness. The energy gradients that allow stars to shine and brains to think will be gone. The cosmos will still exist, but it will be dead, incapable of knowing itself. All the consciousness that has ever existed, all the awareness and wonder and questioning will be over. The universe will continue, empty and dark and forever, experiencing nothing, knowing nothing, being nothing but photons spreading into infinite cold. This is perhaps the loneliest ending. Not transformation into something new, not destruction, just silence, forever. And yet, even this ending has its peace. Because heat death is so slow, so gradual, that consciousness has time to experience everything worth experiencing. We have billions of years of stars, trillions of years of stellar remnants, unimaginable eons of black hole evaporation. Time enough for every possible thought, every possible experience, every possible configuration of awareness. When the end finally comes, when the last black hole evaporates and the last photon redshifts into nothingness, consciousness will have had its full expression. The universe will have known itself completely. And then, having done so, it can rest. There's a kind of completion in that, a sense of task finished, of purpose fulfilled. The universe existed. It became complex. It achieved awareness. It experienced itself. And then, having done what universes do, it could stop. Not with regret, not with resistance, just completion. Now let's get stranger. Let's talk about scenarios that aren't in the standard cosmology textbooks. but that physicists entertain in their more speculative moments. What if the universe is a simulation? Not a simulation in the pop culture sense, where we're characters in some alien teenager's video game, but a simulation in the sense that the physics we experience is a simplified, low-resolution version of some deeper reality. Imagine that the true universe, whatever that means, operates on rules so complex that conscious beings can't evolve fast enough to think in those rules. So the universe creates pockets of simplified physics, regions where the rules are consistent and predictable, enough for complexity to arise and minds to evolve. We live in one of those pockets, our vacuum state, our fundamental constants, our laws of physics. They're not the deep reality. They're an approximation, a user interface, a simplified version of something far stranger. Vacuum decay, in this interpretation, is when the simulation ends, when the universe decides this particular pocket has run its course and recycles the computational resources into some other configuration. We're not being destroyed, we're being logged out, closed, terminated not out of malice but because the process we're part of has reached its natural conclusion. This is wild speculation, barely connected to physics, more philosophy than science. But it's worth considering because it reframes vacuum decay from disaster to transition. You were never meant to run forever. You were always a temporary process in a larger system, and when the process ends, the system continues running other processes, exploring other possibilities. Your ending isn't the universe's ending, it's just your iteration completing. What if consciousness is contagious? Here's a thought experiment with no basis in established physics, but interesting implications. What if awareness, once it arises in a region of the universe, changes the quantum properties of that region in subtle ways? What if minds, by observing and collapsing wave functions and entangling with their environment, create a kind of information field that persists even after the individual minds die? Over billions of years, as more and more conscious beings evolve and think and experience, this information field grows. It becomes denser, more complex, more aware. Maybe not in the way individual minds are aware, but in some distributed, holistic sense. Eventually the field becomes something like a cosmic consciousness, not a god, not an entity with intentions or personality, but a kind of universal awareness woven into the quantum structure of reality itself, arising from the accumulated impact of all the individual consciousnesses that have ever existed. And maybe, just maybe, this cosmic consciousness can influence the stability of the vacuum. Maybe awareness itself is what's been preventing vacuum decay all along, holding the false vacuum in place through some mechanism we don't understand. If this were true, then the end of consciousness would trigger vacuum decay. The universe could only maintain its current physics as long as it's being observed, being known, being aware of itself through countless minds. When the last mind fades, when heat death claims the final conscious being, the vacuum loses its stability and decays. Consciousness and vacuum stability would be linked. Not because of any magic, but because awareness is a quantum process, and quantum processes can influence field states in ways we're only beginning to understand. This is not science, this is poetry masquerading as physics, but it suggests an interesting possibility. Maybe we matter more than we think. Maybe consciousness isn't just a passive observer of the universe, but an active participant in its stability. Maybe the universe needs us to exist in order to remain itself. Let's think about parallel universes, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics taken to its extreme. Every quantum event branches reality into multiple outcomes. Every time a particle's position is measured, the universe splits into versions where the particle is here and versions where it's there. Every decision you make creates a universe where you chose differently. The number of parallel universes is incomprehensibly vast, growing exponentially with every quantum event, which is to say, with every fraction of a second that passes. Now apply this to vacuum decay. If a quantum fluctuation can trigger the nucleation of a true vacuum bubble, then in some branches of the multiverse it happens, in others it doesn't, from a Many worlds' perspective, you don't experience vacuum decay because the versions of you that experience it cease to exist, and consciousness can't experience its own cessation. You only experience the branches where you survive. This leads to a disturbing conclusion called quantum immortality. You subjectively experience an infinite lifespan because you only exist in branches where you haven't died. Every moment that could kill you creates a branch where you die and a branch where you survive, and you only experience the survival branch. Applied to vacuum decay, even if the bubble nucleates, even if it's expanding through the cosmos right now, you'll never experience it crossing Earth. You'll only experience the branches where it hasn't happened yet, where the quantum fluctuation that would have triggered it didn't occur. You're immortal from your own perspective, doomed to experience increasingly unlikely scenarios where you continue surviving long after probability suggests you should have ended. This is either comforting or horrifying depending on your perspective. You can't experience the end, but you also can't escape existence. You're trapped in the branches where you persist, riding the ever-narrowing thread of quantum states where you still exist. And here's where it gets really strange. If quantum immortality is real, then your subjective experience becomes increasingly improbable. You'll find yourself in situations that are less and less likely, because you only exist in the branches that didn't kill you. Maybe that's already happening. Maybe the fact that you exist at all, in a universe with constants fine-tuned for life, is evidence that you're already experiencing quantum immortality. You only exist in the improbable branch where the universe can support consciousness, and you'll continue existing in increasingly improbable branches until... what? Until the concept of branches no longer applies, until consciousness itself becomes impossible. Across all branches? We don't know. The many worlds interpretation might not be true. Quantum immortality might be a mathematical artifact with no physical reality. But it's worth pondering, because it suggests that vacuum decay, from your subjective perspective, might be impossible to experience. You'll live in the eternal present of the branches where it hasn't happened yet, and that eternal present might feel exactly like this moment feels now. Let's talk about information now, about the possibility that reality is fundamentally computational, that the universe is made not of matter or energy, but of information, of bits, of quantum states that can be measured and manipulated. If this is true, then physical laws are like software, and vacuum decay is like a system update. The hardware, space-time itself, persists, but the software changes. Different rules, different behaviors, different outcomes. From an information theoretic perspective, what matters isn't the specific, physical substrate, but the information it encodes. Your consciousness is a pattern of information instantiated in neurons, but maybe that pattern could be instantiated in other substrates, other physics. If the vacuum decays, if the physics change, maybe the information that is you could, theoretically, be preserved and re-implemented in the new physics. Not as the same conscious experience, the new substrate would create different qualia, different awareness, but as a continuity of information. This is the computational hope, that consciousness is substrate independent, that what you are is not the specific atoms and forces but the pattern, the information, the organization. And patterns can sometimes survive the transformation of their substrate. We see this in normal life. Your body replaces most of its atoms every few years, but you remain you because the pattern persists even as the particles change. Maybe vacuum decay is just a more extreme version of this. The particles change, the forces change, the laws change, but if the information survives, if the pattern transfers, then something of you persists. Probably not. Almost certainly not. The new physics would be so different that the concept of neural patterns might not even apply. But it's a possibility worth considering, because it suggests that endings might not be as final as they seem. Information is slippery. It's hard to destroy completely. Even black holes, which were thought to destroy information, might actually preserve it in subtle correlations in their Hawking radiation. Maybe the universe is information preserving at a fundamental level, and vacuum decay is just another transformation that looks like destruction but is actually reorganization. Your pattern might scatter, might dissolve into unrecognizable forms, but the information might persist, woven into the structure of the true vacuum, a ghost of complexity in a realm that no longer supports the specific kind of complexity that is you. That's not survival in any meaningful sense, but it's not total annihilation either. It's transformation, which is what the universe does. It transforms endlessly, and maybe we're just one form in an infinite sequence of forms, arising and dissolving and arising again in ways we can't predict or understand. Let's think about meaning one more time, but from a different angle. We've talked about meaning as something we create, something that emerges from our consciousness interacting with reality. But what if meaning is more fundamental than that? What if the universe itself is in some sense meaningful, even without conscious observers? This sounds like mysticism, like I'm attributing intentional purpose to the cosmos. But hear me out. Physics has this strange feature. It's mathematical. The laws that govern reality can be expressed in equations, in relationships between quantities, in symmetries and conservation laws. Why should that be? Why should the universe be comprehensible at all? One answer is the anthropic principle. We can only exist in a universe that's comprehensible, because incomprehensible universes can't support the complexity required for minds. We're selected to exist in a universe that makes sense, because sense-making minds can't evolve in chaos. But another possibility is that mathematics is the deep structure of reality, that the universe is mathematical at its core, and physical stuff, particles, fields, space-time, is just how the mathematics manifests. If this is true, then meaning, in the sense of logical coherence and relational structure, is fundamental. The universe means something because it's structured, because its parts relate to each other in non-arbitrary ways, because it embodies principles that can be discovered and understood. Vacuum decay, in this view, is one mathematical structure transforming into another mathematical structure. The meaning changes, different symmetries, different conservation laws, different relationships, but meaning itself persists. This doesn't help you survive. Your specific pattern of awareness still ends when the physics can no longer support it. But it suggests that the universe as a whole doesn't descend into meaninglessness. It just expresses different meanings, explores different mathematical possibilities. You're not just a random accident in a meaningless void. You're an expression of mathematical structure, a particular way that relationships between quantities can organize themselves, and when you end, the mathematics continues, exploring other structures, other organizations, other possibilities. There's a kind of dignity in that. You're not separate from reality. Your reality knowing itself in one of infinitely many ways it can know itself. Let's drift into something quieter now. Let's talk about acceptance, real acceptance, not as a concept, but as a felt experience. You've been listening to scenarios of cosmic endings for a while now. Vacuum decay, big rip, big crunch, heat death, simulations ending, quantum immortality, information preservation. So many ways the universe might transform or end or continue. And underneath all of them is the same truth. You don't control it. You can't prevent it. You can barely understand it. All you can do is be here, now, aware, experiencing what it's like to exist in a universe that might be temporary, might be eternal, might be transforming in ways you can't perceive. That lack of control could be terrifying. It could lead to despair, to a sense of helplessness and insignificance, or it could be liberating. You're not responsible for the universe's fate. You're not expected to save reality from vacuum decay or heat death or any other cosmic ending. You're just asked to be, to exist, to experience, for however long existence and experience are possible. That's all. Just be. Be aware. Be present. Be open to whatever comes. Be kind to other temporary beings sharing this moment with you. Be curious about the universe that birthed you. Be grateful for the improbable gift of consciousness. The universe will do what it does. It will expand or contract, decay or persist, transform or remain stable. And you'll be part of that process, not controlling it but participating in it, not directing it but experiencing it. There's a peace in surrendering to this, not a passive, defeated surrender, but an active, engaged surrender. You give up the illusion of control while maintaining your full capacity for awareness and action. You can't prevent vacuum decay, but you can appreciate the stability of the current vacuum. You can't ensure the universe lasts forever, but you can experience this moment fully. You can't guarantee meaning, but you can create it, can live it, can embody it in your choices and relationships and awareness. This is the deepest teaching of contemplating cosmic endings. You're not in control, and that's okay. You're temporary, and that's okay. You exist in uncertainty, and that's okay. Okay not in the sense of good or desirable, but in the sense of acceptable, workable, livable. This is the reality you've been given. Existence in a potentially unstable universe, consciousness in a temporary form, awareness that will end or transform. And you can work with this. You can live fully within these constraints. You don't need the universe to be stable forever. You don't need your consciousness to be eternal. You don't need meaning to be objective or permanent or guaranteed. You just need to be here, now, as fully as you can. And you are. You're here. You're listening to these words, forming thoughts in response, experiencing what it's like to contemplate vacuum decay and cosmic endings. You're doing the thing consciousness does. You're aware of being aware. That's enough. That's complete. That's the whole point, if there is a point. Rest in this. Rest in the acceptance that you're a temporary expression of universal process, that you'll end or transform, that you can't prevent this or control it or even fully understand it. Rest in the knowledge that while you exist, you matter, not to the universe necessarily, but to yourself, to the other conscious beings you interact with, to the web of meaning that arises wherever awareness exists. Rest in the certainty that uncertainty is the only certainty, and that this is not a problem to solve but a reality to accept. The vacuum holds or it doesn't. You persist or you transform. The universe continues or it changes, and through it all, in this moment, you are aware, you are experiencing, you are here. That's not nothing, that's everything. Let the cosmic horror dissolve completely now. Let it become cosmic wonder. Let the fear of endings become appreciation for beginnings, for middles, for the entire arc of existence from emergence to dissolution. You are stardust contemplating vacuum decay. You are atoms organized into awareness, thinking about the stability of quantum fields. You are the universe asking whether it will transform itself, and that asking, that wondering, that questioning is itself remarkable beyond measure. Sleep now if you wish, or stay awake in this quiet contemplation. Either way, rest in the deep knowledge that you're exactly where you need to be. Here, now, existing in whatever form existence takes in this moment. The horror was never the point. The horror was just a door, and you've walked through it into something larger and quieter and more accepting. You're part of the cosmos. You always have been. You always will be. In some form, in some configuration, as some pattern of information or energy, or mathematical relationship. You can't fall out of the universe. You can only transform within it. And transformation is what everything does. Always has. Always will. Be at peace with the unraveling. Be at peace with the uncertainty. Be at peace with the temporary nature of all forms, all structures, all consciousness. You are the universe being aware for now. And now is eternal, is complete, is enough. The boundary may never come, or it may have already begun, racing toward us through the dark, and we simply don't know yet. Either way, we're here now, breathing, thinking, aware. The vacuum is stable in this moment. The constants hold. Your atoms remain bound by forces that have persisted for billions of years. That's all we can ever truly know. This moment, this breath, this awareness. The rest is beautiful uncertainty, and we float in it together, temporary patterns of consciousness in a cosmos that may itself be temporary, finding meaning not despite the impermanence but because of it. Sleep well. The universe is held together for one more day, and tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow, we'll be here to witness it. That's enough. That's everything.